Hello everybody, good morning. I've got the window open today, I can hear the church bells. I wonder if you'll be able to hear the background noise with the window. I don't think I've ever done a session on here with the window open before. That's how warm it is. I remember a few weeks ago someone saying, oh, I've been told we're going to have a really nice summer this year. And so far we've actually had some sunshine, which is wonderful. Anyway, I'm Rosie. Hello, happy Friday. Hope you're all well. Today we're doing a very simple craft. Quite lucky, really, because if it had been quite strenuous, we'd all be too hot to do it, wouldn't we? So this is a really, really simple one. And really, it's kind of more about how we cut out shapes and build them up. That's kind of where we're going with this. So we're going to make a sort of abstract face, and this is made using just one cereal box, some scissors and a glue stick, and that's it. Now this one has obviously got some colour on it. You can see that it's not cardboard coloured, but I promise you it is definitely a cereal box. And the reason that it's got paint on it is because I originally wanted to try and make this into a print. So I thought that I could try and roll paint onto it and then print it onto paper. But then I realised that the inside of a cereal box is sort of exposed cardboard, and if it gets wet, it gets quite sticky and sort of soaks up all the ink, and it didn't really work. But actually what I found was, it was a nice happy accident, is that when I rolled the paint on it, it actually looks quite nice. So we might do that as well. What I've got is a sponge and a bit of paint and some markers just in case. But you'll see when we make it that actually without the paint, it looks really nice. And the reason it looks so good is because we're building up layers of cardboard. And what I'm going to encourage you all to do today, just as a bit of an experiment, because this is a little bit abstract, it's quite fun. You don't need to have any ability at anything of this, just to be able to hold a pair of scissors and cut out shapes. And I've purposely not given myself a pen, because what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and cut it out without drawing the shapes first, just as a bit of an experiment, really, just to sort of show us that, you know, just sort of cutting out shapes can work, whatever we end up with. So this will be a nice, quick and easy one. And I think you can apply this to anything, really. You could do this with loads of different sorts of faces. You could try animal faces, any sort of face you like. But we're going to try and replicate this just so I can show you how I do it and how I build it up. And I think it just makes a really nice, unusual bit of wall art. You could stick it anywhere. And because we're making it out of a cereal box, there's no real risk of anything going wrong, really. I use my cereal boxes quite a lot. I use my cereal boxes to put as backers for the prints that I sell, so it stops them from bending. So cereal boxes are gold dust in our house. So I've saved a special one, saved one specially for today. So I've got my frosted shreddy box. We're going to use that. It can be any cereal, obviously, any cereal that you have. I'm just going to lift my camera up slightly because I think I'm going to wobble the camera otherwise. We need a bit more height on this. Maybe a bit more, actually. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Let's have a bit more. There we go. So, as I said, we're not going to use any materials apart from the scissors and the glue, maybe a bit of paint at the end if we fancy sort of getting a bit of colour on it. But you'll just need the one cereal box per picture, and you'll see why in a moment. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the box. So this bit is quite important because we're trying to maintain the cereal box without sort of ripping it, essentially. And there is a knack to this because I do this very often because I have to flatten and open up all my boxes. So we're going to start with the end bit and we're going to open that up. And try not to give yourself paper cuts. I do this quite a lot. And then what you're looking for is the seam of where the box has been made. And it's often on the side corner. And you'll see there's like a join here. And this is what we're going to try and open up. And we're going to try and do that without ripping any of the card because we're going to try and use as much of it as we can. And you'll sort of see, hopefully, I don't know if I can show you this, but you might be able to see on the inside. Here we go. This is what we're looking for here. That bit there where it joins, that's the bit that's glued together. And what I tend to do is I'll sort of open it up slightly with my finger, and then I'm trying to wiggle. I don't know if you can see that. wiggle my finger along to open up that seam like so. And we're trying to get as little as rip as possible, which is quite difficult to do under that camera. So I'm going to do it over here. So I want to try and get as much of the cardboard as possible. I'm doing a terrible job of it because I'm on camera, obviously. But then what you're left with is your whole piece of cardboard, like so. And you've got a little bit of rippage here, but that's okay. What we're going to do is we'll use these areas to create all of the shapes. And the flattest area that's nice and neat, we're going to use as our canvas, essentially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and now I'm just going to see what size I did this. It's definitely the same width, but I've maybe gone a little bit shorter. I wonder if maybe I ripped this slightly, the last one. But it's really great to use a cereal box because you've got all your markers. You've got all these sort of fold lines which you can use, and they're just quite helpful. It means that you've already got different sections that you can use to cut out, and it's not just one big blank piece of cardboard, which is why the cereal box works so well. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut along here. So I'm going to get my canvas out of this lovely flat bit here. And I'm going to cut along with my scissors as neatly as I can. But this is not really a neat craft at all. This is quite, you know, it's cut and paste. It's not supposed to be fancy. It's super easy. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to keep all of the bits that we chop off because they might be useful later. So I'm going to chop the edges here. So, and again, because we've got all these fold lines, we're going to get a nice straight edge because we've got a guide to show us where we're going with it. And then the last one here. There we go. So now we've got our canvas, which is perfect. Now, I guess at this point, what I could say is that you are welcome to use the other side. There's nothing stopping us using the shiny side. If you wanted to have a go at printing them, so that would be rolling the ink on and then sort of plonking them down on a bit of paper, you could try it. And I think it would work better with this shiny side. And it might be that you quite like the idea of those shapes being created from all of these sort of the pictures in the cereal box. But I'm going to stick to this side purely because you'll be able to see it better on this camera. And we can always add to it later on. So we've got our blank canvas, and then what we're left with is quite a few offcuts which we can use to create our shape. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sort of general face shape, and we're going to build it all up. That's kind of the idea. So you'll see here what I've got. I've got the first bit here is my face, and we're going to kind of there is a word and I'm not going to be able to say it properly. Compartmentalize. That's a word, isn't it? You know what I mean. We're going to deconstruct it essentially. We're going to deconstruct each area. So it's all about creating texture, really, isn't it? And the sort of embossed areas. So every single element of the face is going to be a separate bit of cardboard, and we can build upon them. And that's what makes it look so fun. So we're going to start with our face. And because we know that this bit that we've cut out is the same shape as this bit, we've got our guide. And this is why I don't think we need a pencil. I don't think we need one. So what I'm going to do is, I know that the width of this bit here, in fact, what I'll do is I'll chop this side bit off just to make it easier for you guys to see. So you know what I mean. Because you can do this, you could chop all the edges off of your cereal box so that you've got all those extra bits. I'll do that now. Let's do this properly. Okay. Great. So I've now got two pieces that are exactly the same, which means we've got a guider on this bit here because we know that whatever we cut out of this will fit quite nicely on here because it's the same shape. So I'm going to do a face shape, and I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm just going to cut it out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm leaving enough space at the top to do some hair. So that's all I need to remember really. So I'm going to maybe do 2/3 of this piece of cardboard and just do a very generic face shape. And this is where, if you want to do this, this is super simple. So you could do this multiple times, you could do multiple faces, where you could experiment with shapes. So for example, this one I have done, it's an oval that's sort of chopped off at the top. So you've got a straight edge at the top and then oval shaped. You could do a circle, you could do a square, you could do a full oval. Like, the possibilities are endless. You could do whatever shape you fancy. So I'm going to stick to the one that we've got as the example. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop this sort of top third off. And again, I'm not really thinking too much about it. We're going to just see what happens. So now we've got that much left. And all I really need to do is cut a sort of circular ovally shape out of it. So I'm going to go in ever so slightly so that we've got a bit of an edge. And we're going all the way around. And then we're left with this shape and this shape. Now, what I would say is we could probably use both of those. Don't throw anything away until you're completely finished, because we've got so many opportunities to use our sort of offcuts. Good morning, Irene. Lovely to hear from you. I hope you've got your scissors ready and enjoying the heat. So I've got my sort of ovally face shape, and that's going to sit there. Now, because it's quite bright in here, it's always bright in here, I've got the blinds closed. It's still not working. The sunshine's getting through. I'm just going to turn that over for a second and leave it there while we cut the next bit out, just so you can see the shape that I've cut it out. I'm going to stick it down cardboard up, but so you can see the picture and you can see the contrast between the two. So we've got our face shape, and we know now as well that we've got this third left, which fits in this area perfectly. And this we can use to create our hair or top of head, hat, whatever you decide to put atop your face. But again, I'm going to stick to what I've done in the example, and I'm going to just do some sort of wiggly hair. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go in ever so slightly in the width so that we chop a bit of the edge off, and I'm just going to do some sort of like wavy shapes essentially. And I'm not being careful, I'm not being precise. I want this purposely to look quite sort of almost childlike, quite simple. Good morning, Christine. Hope you're staying cool. It's so funny, isn't it? As soon as it gets hot in this country, we also, oh goodness, how are we going to stay cool? We don't know how to. We don't know how to operate. So we've got our, basically I've done like a scalloped edge. It's sort of like a crown, I think. Yeah, let's say crown. Let's say it's a crown. And again, I'm not going to keep it like this. I'm going to stick it down the other way up, but it's just so you can see how I've cut it out. And what I really like about this sort of thing is that you get all of these offcuts, which might be useful. We've sort of got this scalloped edge here that at some point we might be able to use for other parts of the features. So we've got our first layer essentially, and now we can start a sort of build up. So I'm going to do the face first. I'll do the facial features, and then we can embellish it afterwards with any gaps that we've got with whatever we fancy. I think personally the easiest way to start is with the nose, because again, this is all about, I quite like doing crafts that sort of deconstruct what you're doing so that everything feels less scary. Because if you go suddenly now I've got to cut a face out, oh my goodness, that's quite scary. But if we can sort of grid it up into bits, then we only have to concentrate on each part of the grid as we go, and that's way easier to do. So I'm going to start with the nose. So looking at it, I'm going to find, first of all, I'm going to use this offcut here that I cut the face out of, and I'm thinking straight away we've got some lovely straight lines here that are quite long that we know are going to fit the face quite well because we cut the face out of it. This one I'm thinking already is quite nice, and I quite like that it's got this slight curve on it. So we're almost creating parts of the face without trying to. It's sort of it's a little bit of a cheat, which I quite like. I quite like that it gets bigger here, and I'm thinking I might just chop it there. See what happens, shall we? But then also we might also look at sort of this edge, for example. We've got our scalloped edge here, and this itself makes quite a nice nose. So I tell you what, we'll see. We'll put it to the test. I'm going to chop this bit here, pop, and we'll see what that looks like. And again, I'm only putting it on top of the cereal side so that you can see the contrast. So this is one possibility for a nose. It's quite nice. And then we've also got this one, which is the one I originally looked at. I'm just going to chop it there. So we've got two options for noses there. So this one's quite nice. I like the shape of it. I like that it gets bigger at the bottom. If we placed it right at the top here, we've got enough room for the mouth. But then this one I quite like. This is a bit different. This is quite different to the one that I'd done originally, which makes me think I should use that because it's a bit different. Yeah, I quite like it. I'm going to go with this scalloped edge. What I am going to do is I might chop off this edge here just to give me a bit more space along the sort of cheek area. Oh, that's gone flying across the desk somewhere. So simple as that. We've got our nose. That's our next layer. And so if I turn this over, let's see if you can see it just as well. You can kind of see it. It's still so glare. If I just I'm trying to block the light out as much as I can. It's very difficult. But we've got our nose anyway. I'm quite happy with that. I like that shape. And then I think, personally, and again, you can do this in any order you so wish, but I think it's quite nice to either create sort of eyebrows or something that's going across the top of the face just to shape the eyes. And I think doing that, and I sort of apply this to lots of different crafts. So if I'm drawing or painting, again, if you're sort of creating shapes, then the more scary bits seem easier. So the eyes and the mouth, which are the hardest bit, I think. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create, maybe I'm going to go with the eyebrows first. So first of all, I'm going to have a quick look at these to see if any of these might be a nice shape. They've got some curve on them, but maybe too much curve for the eyes. What's this one saying? This one here is quite nice. So the curve at the bottom of the face would make quite a nice eyebrow. So let's try that. I'm going to almost chop the bottom of the face off. So that was the chin that we cut out. And if we place that, I mean, it's too big, but we could chop it down. And actually there's nothing wrong with it being too big because it can overlap here. And then you get this sort of weird point here. And this is when we can start thinking about the layering, because if we stick that down, then do we want to put the nose on top? That might look quite nice. I quite like that. I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to chop the edges off them slightly, just so it's slightly narrower. I think, yeah, that feels better. And I quite like the idea of the nose sitting on top of it. Stay where you are. There we go. And again, I would say these tiny little bits that I've chopped off the edge might be useful later if you want some little bits. So we're going to keep those to one side. So we've got our first eyebrow. That looks good to me. So now we need to create another eyebrow shape. The wind is slapping things in my room. I'm just looking at the side of this face and just wondering if that does anything. I don't know if it's curved enough. We can try it. We can certainly try it. And this is the great thing. We can just follow the lines that we've already created and see what happens. So I've just sort of cut that shape out and we're going to see if that works. I mean, I think that looks quite nice. Again, I might just chop the edge off it a bit and make it slightly smaller. But I think that works quite nicely as two eyebrows. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got our eyebrows. That's looking good. The next thing we're going to do is the eyes. Now, I think when we're doing it like this, the eyes are quite easy. But I will show you some different things that we can look at. So I've got the two edges here of the cereal box. And I'm wondering if, so these folded edges here, they're quite nice to use. I think they're maybe ever so slightly too small, but it's just a thought, just to remember that if you want a piece that is smallish, you've got some ready-made. But I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this bit here for the eyes, and I want slightly bigger than those folded bits. So I'm going for the sort of that shape and that shape. So I can see here, if I hold those against this area, that when I chop them down to size, they're going to fit quite nicely. And all I'm going to do, well, I'm going to chop that little edge off first of all. I'm happy with the width of them. So all I need to do is do a semicircle. We're sort of doing an open and a closed bracket is what we're doing. And it doesn't matter if they're different. I think it works better if they're slightly different, to be honest. You want different shapes. 1, 2. I don't want them to look the same. I want them to be different shapes because I want that sort of abstract. What I should have done really is I should have advertised this as a sort of Picasso collage, because that's sort of what we're doing, isn't it? I've only just realised as I'm saying that we're doing different shapes for the eyes, that basically what we're doing is we're making a Picasso face out of the cereal box. So that's the inspiration, I think. Subconsciously, I didn't realise until now that that's what it was, but that's what's happening, isn't it? So we've got our different shaped eyes. I mean, they're pretty similar, but I'm not concentrating on making them symmetrical. I don't want it to be symmetrical. I want it to be quite abstract. So there we've got our eyes. We're going to add to the eyes, but we'll do that in a second because we're going to layer everything up. So the next thing that I'm going to do is the mouth. So I think mouths are notoriously quite difficult to do. But I think I've got a good, not cheap. I think I know how I'm going to do it. So again, we want to sort of figure out the width and the length of each bit. I've got one of these long edges here. It's too wide for sure. But if what we do is if we cut a sort of piece that sort of overlaps the edges of the nose like this. So I know that that's way too big for sure, but what I can say is that it's definitely going to fit the area once it's chopped down. It's not going to be too small. It's sort of a nice width. This is probably quite a nice way to sort of learn how to construct faces when you're drawing them as well, because you get an idea of sort of ratios as to where to place things. So it's sort of wider than the nose, not as wide as the face, but we're going to chop it right down. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do this like I did the eye. So the first thing that I'm going to do is a semicircle or bracket, open bracket, close bracket, whichever way you hold your scissors, like so. And I've sort of done it halfway along the cardboard. So we've still got those straight edges there. And that's going to be the bottom part. And you can now see that we probably want to go in a little bit further and make it a bit smaller. Otherwise, it's going to take up too much space. So now I've done that bit, I know that I can probably start on the top lip a bit further in, sort of here. That makes sense. So we're making it slightly less wide. And so for this one, so we're going to do our closed bracket or open bracket for the bottom of the lips. And then the easiest way to describe how I'm going to do the top lip is an M shape. So we're doing the letter M, capital M, but depending on the shape that you're doing it, it might be a real sort of uppercase M. But if it's a wider area, you might want to imagine it that you've got a letter M and you've sort of pulled it out a bit, so it's wider. So it's almost like a wave. So you're doing a wavy M. That's how I'm describing that. And as I said before, I'm going to start further into this bracket so that we're making it slightly smaller. And I'm going to go up and down and up and down. Ta-da! I think that's pretty good. Oh yeah, I'm happy with that. I like that a lot. We're going to add to it. We're going to add some detail to it, but I think that's a pretty good set of lips, isn't it? Really nice. So you're going to do your bracket for the bottom and then an elongated M for the top. And again, we'll add bits to it. So now we've got our sort of dimple part of the face, and we can start thinking about embellishing it. And we can also start thinking about what we might add in these other areas. So now we're sort of on, I suppose, maybe I'm going to do some embellishments for this bit first, and then we'll be on to our third layer, which is where we can start making the face more detailed. So let's have a look. Have we still got our crown? So this was the bit that cut out of here. And I'm just wondering if we can use any of these bits to embellish the crown itself. Because what we could do, so let's see what happens if I cut out around some of the scalloped edges. And if it doesn't work, it's fine, but it might be useful for something else. So we've got our scalloped edge here. So that's too big, but what we could do is we could cut it down and it could go sort of, if I don't get all these tiny bits flying onto it, like so. I might chop one of these ones along like this and just have a look. You might have some different ideas as to how you want to embellish it, but I'm just going to sort of do some random shapes. And what I might do, again, get one of these sort of little thin bits, and I might create another scallop that's slightly thinner. And then that could go inside one of them like that. That looks quite nice. I might do another one of those to go in that end one. Beautiful. And then we might do some little dots, or we've got all these little edges that we've chopped off. We're going to save all of those. They're all going to be quite useful, so they could be put amongst the crown. So again, we're just adding a little bit of texture, which should work quite nicely. I'm going to build up the face first, and then we'll think about what we're going to put here. So what we might do is, if we have space, we might get an ear or a couple of ears in there, or we might get some hair, or it might be that we just put some patterns on it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to continue with the eyes. So I'll get my example piece again, and you'll see here that I've built it up a couple of times. So we've got our eye shape, then we've got a circle, and then the tiny bit in the middle. And I think that's the easiest way to do it. So we're going to find something that is around the same sort of width as the eye, so that will work quite nicely. And we're going to sort of try, and I'm going to do a very, very simple oval and see. So that's too big for that eye. If I show you a bit closer, if I do it that way. But that's quite nice. There's nothing wrong with that. Or we might cut it down a little bit more. Oh, yes, that's lovely. Again, I'll turn that over just so you can see the contrast. And we'll change that before we stick it down. I think maybe I can close in a little bit more now. I'm not dealing with the box constructed, so I'm not going to wobble too much. That works quite nicely. Remembering to keep all my little offcuts because I might use them later. And then I'm going to do the same here. And again, I'm not worrying too much about it being the same as the opposite eye because it doesn't need to look the same. Yeah, that's quite nice. Quite happy with that. And then we can do our tiny little circles, which we can use of some of these little offcuts here. And we can go. And I'm purposely not doing a good circle. I want it to be quite jaggedy and sort of an interesting shape. So there we go. So we've got our eyes there. So we've gone up to our third layer now. So you've got the eye, this bit, and then the tiny bit in the middle. And then now we can look at the mouth. So we're going to add a sort of line across the mouth. So again, I would look for maybe one of your offcuts that has a curve on it. That would be quite nice. And we can maybe just essentially just make it thinner. See what happens if we plonk that on there. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Happy with that. And what we could do if we wanted to is we can add some like little sort of lip lines. So we could get one of our tiny little bits of cut out and sort of see what happens. I mean, we are in the territory where if we do stick these little lines on, they're going to look like little teeth, which might be a bit strange. but it might work. Yeah, that just looks like, oh, maybe if we chop it down a bit, let's have a look. And then maybe another one here. Well, I mean, I think they look like vampire fangs. What if we put them on the top lip? Maybe that would be better. Yeah, I think that's quite nice. Better. Definitely doesn't look like fangs now. Although if you want them to look like fangs, that's totally okay. You could do a monster themed cereal box face, couldn't you? I'm going to add something on the nose as well, I think. I'm tempted to chop it down slightly, actually. I feel like this bit might be a bit wide. So I'm just going to chop the bottom bit off because I feel like I want a bit more space. Yeah, that I feel looks better. But what I might do is I might put like a couple of little dots in here, almost like the nostrils. And again, they're in completely the wrong place, but we've just realised that we're being influenced by Picasso, so that's fine. So I'm going to chop 2 little squares out of this little offset here. See what happens if I place them sort of in the general nostril area. Yeah, that looks quite fun. I like that. Fantastic. And now I'm thinking actually what I might do is I might do a bit of detail on the eyebrows as well. So it might be that you just find a sort of offcut that would work. And again, just thin it out slightly so it fits. Because now we're into the territory where we're sort of doing quite small bits. But it's just the more layers you add, the more interesting the picture will be. And then this one here, we might do something. And again, I'm looking for a rounded edge. And then I'm going to thin it out. So I've got a really tiny thin bit like this. And that might fit. Oh, I think that will fit perfectly on there, won't it? Yes, fantastic. So we've got our lovely layers. And now we've got these lovely cheek areas. So I feel like we need to do something with those. Absolutely. I'm starting to wonder if I might keep the cereal box open on this side so we can see it. If we're going to dab some paint on it afterwards, I might keep it like this. Quite like it. I'm not the shreddy eater in my house, by the way. I like a Weetabix, but this was the first one I could find. Yes, I want to put something on the cheek, so we can be quite sort of experimental with this. I quite like doing very, very elongated eyelashes. You could just do a little circle as like little sort of little cheeks. This side has less space than this side, so this side would be really nice to do a nice zigzagged edge. So I'm going to do that for this. So like this bit here. So it's just like a very exaggerated lower eyelash, which I quite like. I'm really into that. So I'm going to, so for this one, what you might want to do is sort of get a bit of a handle on the shape of the eye itself. So I'm going to hold that, and I'm not going to use a pencil to do it, but it's just so I can get the right shape of the eye. So I'm going to very gently cut round the eye like that. And then I'm going to take that excess, that can go, the eye can sit back down there. And then I know that this shape here will fit quite nicely underneath the eye. Oh, it was going to be this one, wasn't it? Will it work? Well, let's just see if it works, shall we? I did the wrong eye. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do like a zigzag shape. I'm going to make it not too long because there's not a huge amount of space. We'll see if it fits on that other side. So we've got that zigzag and we can cut it down. So that's definitely too wide. Does it fit this side? I'm just wondering if we put it underneath the nose because it does look quite nice. Yeah, but I think what I'll do is, again, I'm going to sort of chop a bit of the width off so we have a bit more space like that. And now we can see which side. Yeah, I think it does work on that side, doesn't it? That's good. So we've got our zigzaggy eye. And this side here, what have I done on this one? I've done a little heart. I think I'll do a heart on this one as well. So again, we just want a nice small bit. I'm going to use one of these little bits off the edge of the cereal box. And I'm going to do a very simple heart. This one's a bit misshapen, but I quite like that. And into the, there we go. Move that excess off out of the way. Oh, lovely, lovely jubbly. That's working nicely for me. I want to bring the nose down slightly. And although I'm sort of faffing with these bits, it's all going to come off in a minute, so we need to glue it all down. In fact, we're going to have to glue it down quite soon, aren't we? So we're nearly done anyway. So what I'm going to do very quickly is we're going to add something over here and over here. So for this one, I've done like little, almost little spirals that kind of like hair. I don't think we're going to fit ears in this one. I've obviously done the face a bit wider, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm going to get some long bits. So this bit here, oh, you can't see that, can you? I've zoomed in too much, haven't I? Let's just zoom out ever so slightly. Apologies for the wobble. So this bit fits here perfectly. So I'm going to chop this in half vertically, so I know, and then I'm going to just see what I can do with it. It might just be that it's an ever so slightly wiggly line with a little sort of bend at the end. It can't be too wide though, otherwise it's not going to fit on the card, on the canvas space. So there we go. I've done like almost like a little golf club. That fits nicely, but I am going to thin it out ever so slightly so that it's not too wide. Lovely. And then we've got our other bit. Where's the other bit? Here it is. And we'll do the same again. So we'll go, so it needs to be, okay, so I'm going this way, all the way down, and then I'm going to try and do a little sort of wiggly, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just sort of creating a wiggly thing. And let's just see what happens. Oh yeah, that fits quite nicely actually. I quite like that. Fantastic. Okay, so we have successfully made our face. So now we need to stick it all down. So I think the best thing to do, so this is the hardest bit because it's quite fiddly. So the easiest thing to do is to sort of move everything to one side in its sort of how it is. So for example, let me zoom out again. So what I'm going to do, that was a terrible zoom, wasn't it? That will do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the bits of the eyes together and I'm just going to place them just further out of the camera there. And same with this eye here. So I'm almost replicating the face, but on my desk rather than on the cereal box, because then we can go, then we know where everything is. We've not lost anything. We know where it sits. So this bit's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, really. And then the lips can go there. And then the top, the sort of embellishments for the crown. And then now we're left with our first layer. So really simple. I've got myself a glue stick and I'm just going to go to town with the glue. So I'll start with the face. And again, it doesn't matter which way around you do it. You can do it that way around or that way around, but I'm going to keep it this way around just because it's a bit different. And if you want to use PVA glue, you can use that if you want. I'm using this just because it's a bit quicker. There'd be nothing stopping you using PVA glue and then painting over it right at the end so it all stays secure. It will dry a little bit shiny, but that's not necessarily a problem. And then we're just going to make sure it's right nice in the center there. Get that stuck down. And then we're going to go straight in with our crown. And I'm really going to go for it with the glue because I know glue sticks can be a bit temperamental sometimes. There we go. Stick that down like so. And then we're going to do the side bits, the hair. So this will be a little bit more fiddly. So if I don't have the space to do this, but you're probably best to get yourself like a scrap piece of paper and then put it flat and then use that as your sort of gluing station. So that it's easy to glue everything. I'm just going to get very gluey fingers, I think, but that's okay. I usually do. And then we're going to do that bit of hair there. Oh, this one's very fiddly. The fiddliest bits will be the last bits, like the tiny bits, like the nostrils and the bits on top of the eyebrows. They're going to be the hardest bits to do. And then get that into... And what you're really looking for is to make sure there's gaps between everything. If you've got gaps, then it's going to keep that texture there. So you can see the difference between these bits, and especially if we do decide to put some paint on it. Okay, next thing, I think we're going to go eyebrows next. So I've got my bottom bit of eyebrow. Oh dear. All over the place. And I know that that was quite close to the top, wasn't it? So we're leaving a little bit of a gap. And then we can go in with our embellishment of the eyebrow. That can go next. And this is where it's quite fun, because you can kind of decide exactly where it's going to sit now. Because we're sticking this into place, so you can be a bit more fussy about where you want to place things. And then we're going to put that the other side. And this is going to slightly overlap here, which I quite like. And then we'll do the embellished bit of eyebrow. Stick that into place. Fabulous. And then next we can go in with the nose. So I'm going to take the nostrils off. And the nose is going to sit, it's going to overlap the eyebrow, which is a sort of style choice I've gone for. And then we're going to pop that so it was right about in the middle. Yeah, it needs to go across slightly, doesn't it? About there, I'm going to say. I suppose this is a good reason that you could use, I suppose glue stick and PVA actually would work, is that if you aren't happy with it, you could sort of unstick it and we'd be okay. Okay, eyes next. So we'll start with this right eye. Yeah, that fits nicely. And sort of check as you go, make sure everything's fitting into place. Pop that down there. Beautiful. And then we're going to do all the other layers of the eyes, which will go there. And then the tiny bit in the middle, which will go there. And then the left-hand eye. Going to see if that fits. Yeah, that fits nicely. That can go there. And then we're going to do our next bit of eye. Okay, there. And I'm doing this very quickly. You can definitely take more time with this if you want to. We've got a barcode pupil there. And then we've got our embellishments for our eyes. So we'll do our zigzag first, or our eyelashes, crazy long eyelashes. And that's going to go here. That's overlapping the nose slightly, but that's quite nice. And then we've got our little heart cheek, which is going to go on the right hand side. Going to go about there. Perfect. And then these will be difficult. We've got the nostrils. I suppose this is a good reason you could use your fingers for the glue, is they become quite sticky, so they're quite good to pick up bits. In fact, should we do these the other way around? Let's do these this way around. Okay. Oh, nice. And then we've got our lips. They fit nicely. Very good. They're going to go just there. And then we've got the middle bit here. So she's ever so slightly smiling. She's pleased with herself. So we'll pop that in the middle there. Lovely. And then we've got our two little lines that did look like fangs, but we're going to put those on the top lip. I'm going to turn those over as well so we see those a bit better. Very nice. And then the last thing is the embellishments on the crown. So that one's going to go there. And then we're going to put, I can't remember where we put these. I think this one, is this one here? And was this one here? I don't actually remember now. Not to matter, not to worry. We'll make a decision. So I think that looks quite nice there, doesn't it? Maybe that goes on the end. Oh goodness, not sure. I think that fits there quite nicely, doesn't it? And then we can put that one. Yeah, we can do it like that, can't we? Then there's one in each scallop then, isn't there? Put that one there. And then this one next to it. Very nice. And then the last one here. Very good. Okay, so we have created our cardboard face. I'm really happy with that. I think that looks really nice. So we've layered it all up. We've started with the face and the crown or the hair, and we've done that using the other half of the cereal box because we can replicate the sort of shape and size. And then we've done our features. So we started with our eyebrows, our nose, then our eyes and the mouth, and then any embellishments. And you can decide which way round you decide to put it, whether it's cardboard side or shiny side. And as I said at the beginning, I did intend to do this for printing and it didn't work quite so well, but because I did end up putting paint on it, it did look quite nice. So I think what we'll do as one last little thing is we'll have a see what happens if we do a bit of sponge painting on it. However, what I might do to begin with, just because I have them with me, I've got a big chunky black marker pen. So what we might do is we might sort of draw around a few of the bits and then add the paint at the end. So we can give that a try. And again, it's sort of trial and error really. But what I would say is the main thing is have an experiment, because after all of it, if you've drawn on top of it and you don't like it, because we've built this up with different layers of cardboard and the cardboard is quite thick, you're not happy with the end result, you can just paint over it and you'll still have this face at the end of it because it's been made out of cardboard and layered up. So you're always going to get that at the end of it. So that's the fun bit about this. So I've not done this before with the marker pen, so I'm just going to have a try. So this is a really chunky one, and I'm just going to sort of draw. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw around some of the bits, and then I'm going to use my sponge to go over with the paint just to see what sort of effect we get. Because it might be that we get some of this black sort of shining through. That's sort of what I'm hoping anyway. So I'm just going to see what happens. I'm sort of almost trying to kind of accentuate some of these sort of areas where they've been lifted up. And it might be that you just go around some of it or all of it. We're just going to see what happens. And you'll get a different effect based on whether you use the shiny side of the cardboard and the other side, because obviously the shiny side is coated, so it might not pick up the ink very well. So yeah, we're just sort of having a see here what happens. And then what I'll do is I'll just wait for this black pen to dry. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll sponge the purple on top and see what the overall effect is. And I'm hoping actually, because I've not done it with the sort of advertising side first, I'm sort of hoping that you still get to see elements of that through the ink. That's sort of what I'm hoping will happen, but it might not sure. We shall find out. Okay, so I've sort of, I've done this very, very quickly, so you can spend a lot more time doing it. Now, what I would say at this point is that it's sort of taken away a little bit from the texture because I've just sort of gone around designated areas. but hopefully going back over it with the paint will sort of smoothen that out a little bit so that you're just left with this lovely textural piece. So that's the last thing that I'm going to do. Now, I would say that you are probably safer to put your paint onto a plate or palette and then dip your sponge into the paint. I do not have a plate with me because I was like, sponge and paint, that's all I need. So I am going to just put the paint onto the sponge and then we'll see what happens. So I've just got, this is an acrylic paint. These are from the range, and I think they're only £2 each, and they're really good acrylics. I really like these ones. I think they're great. So you get quite some really nice colours, although this one looks like it's dried out slightly. So let's see what happens. Okay, now I don't recommend doing this at home. As I said, get yourself a plate. I don't have one, so I'm just smooshing this around the sponge and seeing what happens. So I've got some paint and I'm just gonna sponge over the whole of the piece. And already I can see that it's having the effect that I want it to, in that I can now see the features better. I can see those layers better, that I'm putting this one colour, but you've just got a bit more extra because I've put that black underneath. You're sort of seeing, you are seeing that, which I quite like. And you could do this with a roller as well if you've got any sort of foam rollers. It doesn't have to be a sponge. Could be anything you like. I'm just going to rub those bits to get some paint into the edges. And again, you can see the sort of cereal box through it, which I quite like. Whoa, what's happened there? Okay, let's go around this side and turn it round. I just want to get a bit of coverage over the whole thing. And you can sort of see, you can see the black through it, which I like, but you're getting, I have to say, this does look, you definitely get the texture through better in real life than you do on my camera. Maybe if I sort of move it around slightly, you can see it a bit better. It's obviously, it's quite hard for the camera to pick up those embellished areas. But even the bits where they're kind of sticking out slightly, it's more prominent, you can see it a bit better. And I'm just trying to get those edges. And again, there's going to be bits that you're not able to get because there's so many layers there. And I think that's quite good. Quite like that. And what you can do is you could wait a little while and then sponge off some of the excess if you wanted, so that it's not as prominent. And you can get very, very purple fingers doing it. And what you could do, I'm not going to do it now, but what you could do is you could then go in afterwards with another colour and accent some of the bits. But I'm going to stop there. I don't want to do too much. I need to know when to stop. Hopefully you can sort of see, I think when it dries, it will be a bit more obvious, but you've got this really lovely layered up textured face. I think the brightness in this room is sort of taking away from it slightly. But here's the example piece. Now it's dry. This one looks a little bit better because you can kind of see those black bits through it. But essentially, all we've done is chopped up a cereal box and made a really lovely Picasso face. I think next to each other, they look quite nice, actually, don't they? Yeah, one cereal box. I've got quite a few offcuts here, but they can all go in the recycling bin. So we've done a nice bit of recycling. We didn't even use, I mean, I did use a chunky pen to do the black bits, but I totally didn't need to. I could have used paint. So you don't even need to draw anything. We can just cut it all out. And there we have it. Very, very easy abstract face. Picasso inspired, although I didn't realise till much later on. Made out of one cereal box. Beautiful. And that's me done. I Hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope you're enjoying the sun and the heat. Stay cool, everybody. I'll be back in July with a couple more craft sessions. I'm Rosie. My business is Rosie and Ramona. And I'll see you all again soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.